A very good morning to everybody from India and good evening to everybody from the US. Today we have with us a very exceptional lady who likes to track back on not only like what we are doing right now on Corona, but she does it on gems, stones, and other valuable articles, enabling us and empowering us to know where does our products come from. We have with us Carrie George. She's the Vice President and Head of Sustainability and Impact at Everledger. Welcome to our show, Carrie.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Carrie, you have been in this space of enabling clean supply chain all across. So please share with us your journey in responsible business leadership from an investment analyst at InnoVest to Vice President and Head of Sustainability at Everledger.
Well, it's quite a journey. A lot of what I did was just follow the opportunities that were presented to me and the curiosities I had. When I was a researcher at Invest, I really quickly became kind of perplexed by the lack of data that we were able to get as investors, as well as really wanting to understand what these programs companies were talking about. I was fortunate to join a company that did not only different types of audits, but also remediation programs in the supply chain. And that gave me the first glimpse of really what is the practical work of sustainability initiatives and compliance efforts. I was fortunate and unfortunate to go through the 2008 recession, and my CEO at the time, I loved the job, but he encouraged me very strongly to go find another job. And he said, you are curious, you are young, go find something else to do. And I took great offense to it, but I went and I found a fellowship and applied for it and got that at the US State Department. And that CEO and I have stayed friends and colleagues to this day, but what a great leap it was for me to get this fellowship, understand how government worked. And at the time, the US government had just passed some legislation that now we refer to as conflict minerals. But at the time, it was kind of a foreign notion that you would be doing full traceability of minerals in the electronics and auto supply chains. At that time, we had really only done some work on diamonds and coffee and cocoa, but in a limited capacity with certain supply chains and brands. And so this really took off. And because I had had experience with some traceability programs in cotton and cocoa at the US State Department, I was really leveraged for how do companies do this and how do we have these conversations with companies. And I was also working a lot on China labor issues, and I got recruited to Apple, doing both China labor as well as conflict minerals, and quickly ended up focusing most of my time on minerals and mineral sourcing, and then ending up leading several teams on responsible sourcing, both from a data management perspective as well as program implementation for impact. And I stayed at Apple for a little over 5 years, and ended up wanting to pilot different things on circular economy, different types of impact programs. And the jewelry industry gives you so many opportunities to do unique projects because consumers want a unique product. That purchase of that necklace or that ring, it has an emotional value. Whereas in electronics, it's a commodity. It's a different playing field. So I joined a jewelry company and was able to really play around with concepts of philanthropic impact in our supply chain programs, and then also with recycled claims and recycling efforts and a circular economy fashion. How do you get electronic material into a jewelry product and other types of projects? That led me to Everledger. I actually hired Everledger while I was at that jewelry company to perform a lot of our blockchain work on diamonds and to hopefully reduce the burden that we had and have to hire a bunch of people. Instead, let's let machines do a lot of this work to verify different claims and make sure the supply chain documents aligned with what claims we were making. And so with Everledger on board, I was able to do a lot more of that impact work. But then Everledger and my former company, Brilliant Earth, I could see I could do this in all the industries I've worked in apparel and textiles, and in the electronics sector, and in batteries, and so on. And so made an agreement between the two companies, and we moved on and still work with Brilliant Earth through as a client of Everledger, but now work across multiple industries with Everledger. So hopefully that's a quick synopsis, but we can go into any more detail in question and answer section.
It's quite an inspiring journey, and yes, curiosity took you to many places. So you have focused on responsible sourcing in your various roles. What is a benchmark for a company to be responsible producer and consumer?
There's a lot of different benchmarks for companies, but there's a number of different industry-wide expectations. And, there's an industry norm and an industry best practice. So in responsible sourcing, let's say in the electronics industry, there's definitely some minimum goals and some expectations at the mine level. So minerals that you're sourcing, that you should be having due diligence on basics of human rights, child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and non-conflict, relations in the supply chain, not benefiting conflict groups, basically. And then going into environment, there's some key issues on water, energy, and other things. And then in community impact issues, community health and safety. So that's pollution that's impacting a lot of the communities and their water and their air, and a few other components about not reducing livelihoods and having more positive impact. Those are kind of the buckets that are really set out there that continue to churn at the mineral level. At the middle of the chain, a minimum level of traceability is going to be really key. For those middle chain actors, they're oftentimes doing a lot of the processing, so transforming a raw material into the closer to consumer facing material. And so they end up using a lot of water, a lot of energy, potentially have a lot of pollution. And so those are the criteria that a lot of times we're looking at that. So those types of environmental issues, traceability, because we're trying to figure out the raw material and the key risks up there. And then, just some basic labor minimums that would be, no child labor, no forced labor. And usually hours of work start playing into at that level and into the manufacturing sector. So, but there's loads of standards out there per industry. And so it's always, deferring to that, but happy to flag any of those because there's plenty of benchmarking out there on those types of things.
Okay, so that's quite interesting to know. So I believe in the tool, you all must be having these kind of standards already inbuilt, and that enables the client to benchmark themselves industry-wise. Exactly.
Yeah, you definitely want to know what standards are out there and then how you frame up. Though it's good to hire consultants, but there's a lot of that already out there. So the benchmarking, there's lots of public benchmarking, and you can start reviewing where you're really at with some, cursory steps and cursory reviews of that type of public benchmarking. That's quite an interesting product. Now, exactly. Now, you guys are already enabling others to become more sustainable and responsible. So what are the initiatives of Everledger in the space of sustainability and impact? Yeah, I'll give you a handful that are my favorites. So in terms of one of the points that you made, what do consumers expect? Well, we're doing a number of consumer facing initiatives because for all the green reporting or sustainability reporting, consumers get lost a lot of times trying to understand what is valuable, what is green. And now there's different legislation that looks to be passed and implemented across multiple regions, including Europe, already in the United States, for green guidelines on how you're labeling products. So we're trying to make it simplified so that you can say, if this company is compliant with this standard or this standard, how does that compare and contrast? And simply an app-based communication or a native app where you could just be flashing a QR code or that sort of thing and see immediately how that compares and contrasts. That's one of those consumer facing, letting them make the choice on different comparisons, but helping them understand it at the touch of a lot of what we work on is those equivalencies across products and across materials. Another thing we're doing with consumers is helping them know how they can recycle that or how they can resale that product or how they can have it refurbished and the like. So it's part of the circular economy. And this is a project that we've got with the US Department of Energy, where we're looking at the portable electronics market to help consumers keep that product above ground and out of the waste bin and into an economy that will reuse, sell, or recycle it. So those are two consumer-facing areas that I'm really excited about. Other types of opportunities include things that are about small-scale producers. A lot of the challenges we have in the supply chain end up being with smaller companies, maybe even just individuals acting as an operator in a supply chain, and they don't have maybe digital representation, so they don't have a digital ID, so therefore their product isn't traceable, so you can't really make claims about it. They might not have a lot of the audits or the verifications, but they might be able to if they were presented with some of those opportunities. And so as a first step, we're looking at how do we bring them into a digital economy so they can be part of a formal economy as a first place, and looking at different types of mobile money payments so that there can be an invoice, there can be a recognition of an actor, there can be a commercial transaction that can be verified for how much materials so that eventually you can trace it back. And those are some first steps that you really can be enabled through a blockchain mixed with mobile money kind of engagement, as well as other types of initiatives and nonprofits that are working with a lot of these smallholders so that they can raise their livelihoods as well as make their products more legitimate, which usually ends up meaning that they hit a higher price point in the economy for their product. So it's a win-win in multiple areas. But those are two angles of things that I'm mostly interested right now.
I would say that's truly digital transformation, even in the MSME sector.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So while you are transforming the world, does your company partner with other stakeholders for implementation and assessments?
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges in the technology space right now is how do we partner? How do we incentivize each other so that you're getting a fair shake, either through licensing, interoperability agreements, these other things? And how do we get governments, clients to consider these types of relationships? We definitely create partnerships with governments and just general initiatives very easily. But one of the phrases I like to use a lot is, if you know the Lord of the Rings reference, there's no one ring to rule them all. When we're looking at blockchain technology, it's not going to be a single blockchain across the whole of the internet. There's going to be many, many different types of distributed ledger technologies, and they're going to all have to work together, let alone different techniques and opportunities with machine learning and artificial intelligence. All of these are just layers on layers of opportunity that technologies will provide. And what I'm looking at, and I see this in the healthcare industry, especially with COVID, is sharing agreements have to work both ways and be mutually beneficial. And so we're not there yet, but those are the conversations that we're having within our Hyperledger community, across peers and competitors, to say, how do we make this work so our ecosystem quadruples and multiplies, and we start becoming interoperable with each other. But those are just some of the discussions that are being had in that area.
Wonderful. So what do you see is the target of Everledger in the coming 3 years?
We're going to be hammering home on sustainability and circular economy more and more. It's always been a focus, but right now with COP26 and climate change initiatives globally, with modern slavery acts being activated across the world, you couldn't have a more pressing time for clear traceability and chain of custody across your product and the materials that go into it, and layering it with the data and impact actions that we're trying to enable. One of the things that we've been working on is also creating a developer community so that people can feed into our blockchain as well as pull from, so that if you have an initiative, let's say on plastic recycling in the Philippines, that you're able to feed that program into our apparel sector actor that's looking for plastic product or to pay into plastic collection globally. Those are those really unique opportunities that will come per the previous conversation as we see the opportunities and really start driving them home. But Everledger is going to be not sitting back on the sidelines. We'll be pushing those forward more and more as we progress over the next year or so.
Wow, that's excellent. We are looking forward for all these changes to come into reality. So IICSR.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. So IICSR is a dedicated research, development, training, implementation, and advisory institute in the space of responsible business leadership. What kind of courses do you see that the existing manpower need to upskill and the upcoming generation need to be equipped with in responsible business leadership?
I'm more than happy to share with you a couple of the discussions I've had on this topic specifically, because I'm very passionate about new leadership being established. We can't have depend on the old guard. We've got to get a new layer of leaders faster and up to date. And they shouldn't do the career that I've had for 20 years. They need to step where I am almost right now and run forward. So a few things that I really think is very important. We need more students getting into practical internships very quickly. And what that means is they need to have some field experience. So if they've never gone to a factory, if they've never gone to a foreign country, if they've never seen a mine, I mean, one of the first things I did out of grad school is just go visit, find someone to let you in the door so you have a taste of that. Building on that, so you have that firsthand experience, you should have real quantitative skills. You should have real qualitative research capabilities and be a problem solver. There's a lot of greenwashing and a lot of PR in the sustainability space. But if you're someone who's passionate about getting something done, be the problem solver that will lead through the words and find the solution and find the people that do that. So that means a lot of times you're researching a new solution or a new group of actors that are implementing things. I had a really wonderful researcher who worked for me when I was at Apple, who had to find a very specific group in Congo who did a very specific type of child labor mitigation, where they literally are pulling people out of mines, young kids, and putting them into schools and giving them remedial education for 16-year-olds who haven't been in school for 10 years. This was one actor that she had to find out of research for hours and hours, and it ends up being the most successful program to do this sort of thing. And so being that curious sort that will find the right actor for the right solution is a big part of it. But you have to have all those types of, curious skills and people skills as well as the quantitative side. But I'm more than happy to share kind of a breakdown of some of that. And as you're looking for jobs and looking for opportunities, depending on if you're under sustainability, can fit under a legal team or an operations and procurement team. It can fit under materials science. Sustainability roles are really across organizations, and depending on which department you might fit under, you could really have a different skill set that would need to be highlighted.
Wonderful. That sounds excellent. I would definitely, if there is distance internship and virtual internships, so we could find a way to work together on that.
Absolutely.
On this note, may I invite Dr. K.K. Upadhyay to ask his set of questions, and Dr. S.K. Sharma.
Thank you, Harsha. Carrie, you talked about environmental issues, water, energy. Let me tell you a story. In Madhya Pradesh, in Buxar area, we had Rio Tinto. They wanted to go for diamonds. There's plenty of diamonds in that area. They worked for almost 5 years, but due to social issues, the local community and all, they had to exit. They could not continue in that area. Do you find social issues which are becoming more and more important in India, particularly in other parts of the country, other part of the world also?
Absolutely. I oftentimes, I've had some people that are more environmentally focused say, I just focus on the environment. People don't matter as much, or I don't need to worry about people. I need to focus on the environment. Nothing in the environmental realm and impact on the environment will work without people. And if people are disgruntled, they will set back any gains that you might have on climate change or water pollution prevention, or the like. People can be our greatest asset as well. I've seen communities that take on their various issues and change the game for everyone. So it's definitely a big part of the discussion. And the phrase social license to operate is not something to be passed by. It's across the world, really. In Silicon Valley, where I'm based, you see a lot of the tech companies really focusing on digital inclusion right now. Because of that, they're seeing that while they've been very successful, a lot of communities in and around, even in the United States, are still not part of the full digital world. And so how do we really bridge that divide so we're closer and closer? And that can be across economic issues, that can be across food security issues, livelihood issues, and so on. So I couldn't underscore it enough that you can't have sustainability if you don't have people and also becoming successful.
Thank you.
Eddie, your experience appears to be quite deep and wide, and I'm sure your organization and you in particular are widely benefited applying sustainability and responsibility in business scenario. We will like just to listen from you. What are the primary SDG you are focusing on, Sustainable Development Goals?
Mm-hmm. At Everledger, we are focused on a handful of them through our products. We divide our corporate activities into 3 components: into what our products provide, what our people are doing and how we serve our own people, and then how we impact the planet. So I'll speak to SDGs in that regard. First, I'll start with planet and regarding our products. So our greatest risk as a technology provider is our cloud energy. So that's going to fit into, climate change on SDGs and how we're really focused on sustainable cities that we're involved in. So one of the things that we're working on with all of our cloud energy providers, and that runs the gamut, the Amazons, the IBMs, the Googles, the Oracles, and the like, is making sure they are reporting on their energy, renewable energy versus non-renewable energy, they're reporting and very clear and set targets that are well below what they used to report, but getting closer and closer to where Google as a leader is focused on carbon free, and that we're involved in making sure that we prioritize cloud energy providers that are doing the right thing. And so where some are quite laggards and fall behind that kind of marker and some of the Paris Agreement goals in 2030, we're transitioning our cloud energy coding and services to be on the more responsible providers. So that's the people component we do, or the planet component. We do a number of other things for responsible procurement that fall into people and planet, regarding how we buy our business cards, and they're from 100% the cutoffs from t-shirts and reprocessed into paper. Now, during COVID, we haven't had to pass out a lot of business cards, but that's some of the different procurement goals that we have. In the people component, we have a whole volunteering initiative. We have a lot of benefits for workers. So flexible work with COVID, we really didn't miss a beat because we already had remote work and flexible work environments enabled. A lot of our business is working with women, and a lot of our leadership are also women that have flexible environments for family as well. And then we, in the product component, that's where you see a broader range of SDGs and how we're hitting it, from no poverty and focusing on livelihood development, as I mentioned earlier, with helping different types of smallholders and small scale producers enter the digital economy as well as a formal economy, all the way to responsible work and different types of activities in sustainable business or sustainable cities. So we stretch across a number of SDGs, and actually our website is just being revamped, so I'll be happy to flag everyone to that and the key points under each one of the SDGs that we're highlighting specifically on our products.
That's great. It appears that you are spreading smiles miles and miles away from business ventures, I will say. I would like to listen any exemplary story if you have, relating the changes in people behavior.
Changing people's behavior. It's a great question. I think one of the stories that I have is when I first started at Apple, I had one of our suppliers reach out to me and say, Carrie, thank you so much for all you're doing, and you're communicating a lot. This is really important because when Apple gets a little sniffle, when they get just a little runny nose, everyone gets the worst flu. So you guys pass on everything in a much bigger way. And so you have to be really careful. And I really took that to heart as I was looking at the different type of change that I was trying to initiate. So when I was evaluating what to do, I worked with a lot of the suppliers to get their feedback. Does this work? Does this timeline seem reasonable? Should I ask it this way or this way? Should we use this template or that template? And even that engagement helped with the change, getting feedback and getting buy-in. It might add an extra few hours of work, but immediately I'm starting to get momentum just by building that. And I used to have to go to all these different actors across the world, and especially in my younger days, that was really exciting. Now I'm a little bit tired, so I want more people to do it for me than me do it myself. But at the time, I would be so willing to go to all these actors, but it would take 1, 2, 3, 4 visits before someone really trusted me to hand over oftentimes commercially sensitive types of data sets. And so what we would have to do is build those relationships. Now, what I'm hoping to do with technology now is make a lot of that change easier so that they only have to disclose certain data to a distributed ledger, and then only the data point I actually need gets disclosed to me, so that the change process can be more efficient, more effective, and only what we actually need, and in terms of transparency. But I've been very surprised by how willing people are to change when you have a relationship. They understand why you're doing it and they have an opportunity to tell you a better approach. Just iterate just enough. And then you start seeing a waterfall effect with a lot of people and a lot of their peers when you hit a lot of those marks just right.
Great. In fact, very, very enriching. Thank you for that.
Of course. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay. Thank you, Ms. Kumar, for the questions. Carrie, any final message for all our viewers?
Just keep being excited, be curious, go do good things, have impact. You can do it. It's a great field of work. We need more smart people doing this and feeling passionate. So make sure you have your community and your support system, because it's quite a ride and it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it. I wouldn't give it up for the world.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us and sharing your wisdom and your time. Namaste from India. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you.